before I even introduce myself, start off with some housekeeping. So please note that this webinar will be recorded starting hopefully now. I don't know if I've seen that recording flashing. Megan, I don't know if you're on that. Okay, anyhow, once that recording starts, know that we will send the recording out shortly after the webinar ends. Registrants will also receive a follow-up email with a PDF copy of the slide deck, link to the recording, as well as any resources or links that we've noted throughout the presentation. Do note that this presentation is going to be conducted in webinar mode, meaning that attendees cannot turn on their mics or use the general chat. We are sorry about that, but we just want to make sure that folks don't accidentally come off mute while they're maybe chatting with their colleagues or spouse. And we really encourage Q&A. Do note that we're going to get through all the presentations first before we start moderating a Q&A. You can use the Q&A feature by clicking 9 dots in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and then you'll see a Q&A option. So we'll be monitoring that box and then read off those questions during the Q&A portion at the end. Next slide. So quick reintroduction. My name is Becky Price, and I'll be your host and monitor for today's webinar, which, if you're lost, is on all things mechanical insulation. Just as a personal kind of aside or note, I didn't know much about mechanical insulation before I started planning this webinar, but I've really come to appreciate that it's a super cost-effective measure that provides pretty significant energy savings in buildings, which we know translates to lower utility bills. Kind of quick and dirty run through the agenda. So to kick things off, I'll talk a little bit about the initiative that I run at the Maryland Energy Administration, the Maryland Clean Buildings Hub, kind of what the hub is, our main purpose and mission, as well as some announcements on resources that we're providing. Then we'll kick into the meat and potatoes of today's webinar. So I'm joined by a few guests today. We're first going to hear from Josh with Insulators International, who's going to tell us a bit more about the efficiency benefits of mechanical insulation. He'll run through some case studies and some resources that the union provides to encourage investments in mechanical insulation. We're then going to kick it over to some program implementers with ICF, which is the firm that helps implement the energy efficiency programs for several investor-owned utilities in Maryland. Basically, some of the utilities that participate in the Empower Maryland program, including BG&E, Delmarva Power, and Pepco. And then rounding out our presentations, I'll pass the mic over to my colleague, Megan, who will share a bit about a grant program we have here at the Maryland Energy Administration that incentivizes mechanical insulation. And really, our goal for this webinar is for you all to leave after this hour with a better understanding of the resources available in Maryland for you to invest in these measures. Next slide. If we haven't met before, I run what I said was called the Maryland Clean Buildings Hub, which is an initiative run out of the Maryland Energy Administration, so Maryland State Energy Office. And our mission is to empower Maryland's building owners or operators or managers to make well-informed energy investments in their facilities by connecting them to technical, financial, and educational resources. And I always say that there's a lot of great resources here in Maryland of those persuasions, again, technical, financial, and educational, but keeping track of them is a full-time job. And I know that building owners and just building stakeholders have a lot of competing priorities. So we try to keep track and organize all of those resources to kind of make the task easier for you. Just a few ways that you can connect or interface with this initiative. Kind of first and foremost, all of our content, so again, organizing all of those incentives and resources, lives on the Hub's web pages, which is sort of in a section of MEA's website. We also do a lot of educational webinars such as this one, and we upload all of those on our YouTube channel. And then finally, sort of what I like to call the crown jewel of the Hub initiative is our monthly newsletter. where we send folks relevant funding and financing announcements, educational opportunities like webinars, events, etc., case studies, and more. Next slide. And before I turn it over to Josh, while I have folks' ears, I just wanted to flag a few announcements that I think this group might find exciting and relevant. And then again, rest assured, we will include links to these resources in the follow-up email that you'll receive after the webinar. So first, July 1st is the beginning of our fiscal year in the state of Maryland. So we've been busy at the agency determining the suite of incentive programs that we'll be offering in the new year. We released a general notice of intent of the sort of programs we'll be offering a couple weeks ago. And this is really just a list of programs that we plan to administer. If you're familiar with the Maryland Energy Administration's programs, you'll notice that this year the list is much more pared down in previous years. When I started at the agency 3 years ago, we had close to 30 grant programs. You'll notice again, this list is significantly smaller, but do not take this to mean that we have less money in fiscal year 27. It's actually the opposite. Fiscal year 27 is going to be our largest budget we've ever seen at the agency. Instead, what we're doing is we're trying to consolidate programs where we can and sort of have a single application for kind of multiple programs. One such program, which kind of leads me to that second bullet, is probably one of the more relevant programs to this audience, and it's the program I'm most excited for, which is the Commercial and Community Buildings Grant Program. This is a competitive program that's expected to provide eligible Maryland buildings with the opportunity to request funding, grant funding, for measures that advance building decarb through really a combination of ways: electrification, energy efficiency, and on-site renewable energy. And the metric we're going to be looking at is quantifiable greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Kind of notably, it's consolidating multiple programs that we offered in previous fiscal years to provide one multi-sector offering. So since this represents, I'd say, a significant change, the program managers have issued a request for information to seek feedback from stakeholders. We'll be seeking feedback until July 3rd, and those responses will help inform program design. And we believe the program should be launched by early fall. And then finally, if you've been on Hub webinars over the last 6 or so months, you've heard me talk a lot about the technical assistance program that we'll be offering for building owners with properties covered by the State Building Energy Performance Standards, or BEPS, as we call them in the industry. Kind of just an update on that. Back in February, we issued a request for proposals for vendors to respond to. We are super close to announcing the vendor that we've selected to assist us with implementing this program. So we can't kind of do it fully in-house because we hope to help thousands of buildings through this program. And really the program is intended to help building owners subject to this policy with compliance activities such as benchmarking, decarbonization planning, incentive navigation, and the like. And we anticipate that the program will be open in the fall. Okay, that is it from me. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to Josh.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity and the time that you guys taken out of your day to come to this webinar. My name is Joshua Scherer, and I'm the Director of Energy Efficiency and Quality Assurance with the Heat and Frost Insulators International. We cover all the United States and Canada. Myself, I come from 20 years trade experience, and we've been doing mechanical insulation assessments and leading that program dating back to 2017. So today I want to talk about mechanical insulation, for your facilities, covering what matters most for us. Mechanical insulation isn't flashy for your facilities. It doesn't set off alarms or anything at your facilities. It's that invisible issue that some facilities may face. So we're just going to try to highlight that for you guys today. So start off by, what is mechanical insulation? So it's applied to mechanical systems and equipment. It's for your heating, cooling, or your distribution of energy throughout your building. It's used on piping, ductwork, boilers, chiller systems, heat exchangers, steam systems, etc. And the controls the heat transfer. It improves energy efficiency. It protects equipment as well as employees, and it enhances your building performance. So what are the benefits of mechanical insulation? So we're going to highlight today with some case studies later on, the reduction of energy loss and utility costs, which in our current global climate is especially important for facilities. It supports any emission reduction and decarbonization goals, whether that be at the state level, facility level. We target those areas and make sure that mechanical insulation is often overlooked at the pure value that it can to this section. Improves system performance and reliability, controls condensation, helps prevent mold and corrosion, improves worker safety and occupant comfort, and extends equipment life and reduces maintenance costs. That's really the factor where we as an organization have highlighted, the energy savings, the carbon reduction. It's easy to see the reduction in temperature for mechanical spaces that may be overheating or may struggle from, mold and condensation issues. For us to be able to validate the extension of the life is something that we struggle with our clients to really show that. But we know that our clients really do see the benefits. That overheated mechanical spaces causes a lot of problems outside of just system performance. Looking at mechanical breakdowns, whether that be electrical components or mechanical components themselves, it can really cause a lot of issues for the facility and the maintenance team trying to operate that facility. So what does insulation mean for your facility? So by having a properly installed insulation system, an energy efficient design mechanical insulation system, we can lower the heating and cooling costs, reducing your energy waste. Mechanical insulation improves the overall equipment reliability, longer asset life for the facility. Obviously, we touched on reducing the greenhouse gases and supporting that decarbonization goals that we see a lot of clients have prioritized. Fewer condensation, moisture, and mold related issues. Within some sectors, especially in our schools and hospital sector clients, with vulnerable sector occupants, that's a very important target for them. Improve worker safety by reducing that exposure to hot surfaces, overall just reducing the temperature within the spaces that they have to work, and identify hidden opportunities for saving through mechanical insulation energy assessments. And we think, early on meeting Rebecca and Megan and the team, we really think that this is the highlight that's often overlooked in mechanical insulation. It is that hidden opportunity that, your facility may walk by these opportunities daily. We like to say that it's the invisible savings and the invisible opportunities, because until an assessment is completed, we've had clients that walk by certain components for 5 years, 10 years, and when you look at it from a different lens, from an assessment, you see the energy loss, you see the savings. It quantifies that as to why are we walking by that invisible opportunity. So how can your facility take next steps? Obviously, we believe the mechanical insulation energy program. There is programs and companies that do this type of work. We definitely support, all facilities taking advantage of that. Just because you may have done energy assessments in the past does not mean that energy assessment encompasses the mechanical insulation trade. So I would definitely encourage anybody that's done mechanical, or anybody that's done any type of energy assessments at their facility, it would be nice to go back and look and make sure that mechanical insulation was highlighted. We believe that by doing that assessment, what it does for the facility is it prioritizes high impact opportunities with the greatest saving potentials. It gives you an opportunity to implement insulation upgrades that reduce the energy costs and emission. And then you can track your overall performance. Improvements and savings, are a very, very important step for facility planning. Most facilities are looking at, 2, 3, 5-year outcomes. By getting that baseline from the mechanical insulation assessment, you can then track and see that progress in real time. I'm going to highlight, our mechanical energy assessment program, so you guys understand what's out there. Like I said, there is other opportunities and other companies that do this type of work, but the main focus and where this separates from other energy assessments is mechanical insulation is somewhat of a niche market. The purpose is strictly to identify missing, damage, or improperly installed insulation. Those are the key components for you as a decision maker from a client perspective. Our traditional findings are usually in the 85 to 90% of the missing damage section. Maintenance happens at these facilities. And oftentimes mechanical insulation, because it's that invisible savings component, it's often missed in identifying and seeing that. So our process, what we believe is very strong, is using thermography to collect the data used and implement it through a 3E Plus software that was built by the National Insulation Association of North America. I think, in our history, and I'll highlight, some of the assessments that we've done, our clients have seen a very factual response to what the thermography offers as far as being a point of contact assessment, rather than using a boilerplate type of assessment where we're taking and not always looking at all the factors. Thermography cuts that and gives you the most factual approach to your mechanical system. And then the end results for the end user is making decisions based on what insulation priorities can be, where those savings can be, what product changes that we can look at. There's so many different products in the insulation industry. There's so many different thicknesses of products. Our focus is using the best products for our clients, as well as looking at new products to the industry. The industry is always evolving, and I think it's important for decision makers to know that we're looking at the best product at the market today. So what types of buildings can benefit from a mechanical insulation sector? As you can see, there's a wide range on this slide. We've done excessive amount of energy assessments in schools, college, universities, the healthcare sector, commercial office, hotel buildings, manufacturing plants, government buildings, apartment buildings, and so on. What I want to highlight today is if your building is operated with any type of mechanical system, it has any type of HVAC systems, there's a very good opportunity for you guys to look at your mechanical system, especially if there's any type of boiler or chiller system, where you may be using that for heating the building and occupant measures. There's huge opportunities. I kind of highlighted already about the health and safety, but just looking at, having trained and qualified people doing your assessments helps in that fire stopping, mold, and asbestos concerns that may be present at your facility. Our team, when we do assessments, we always look to highlight these additional areas of concern. We know that they can be priority areas for facilities, so we add that as an added value in that assessment process. And then I like to just talk about, mechanical insulation and seeing where just by installing 1 inch of fiberglass insulation, which is a very simple, basic process in the industry, what does that do for your facility? So it's not always just about saving the energy and taking those next steps. It's, as systems break down and as temperatures drop in certain regions of the country, we see where cold water piping, chiller systems, freeze, pipe bursts, and it causes a lot of problems for clients. Just by maintaining that system and making sure that 1-inch fiberglass is installed, you can see how the temperature drop and the extended life for the system, or extended time for you guys to make the maintenance changes that need to happen, is greatly extended. So I think it's very important that we're looking at that. Our team, when we do assessments, we're looking for energy savings, but we're also looking for application guidelines and experience coming from the industry for clients to see, maybe this doesn't conserve energy and it doesn't benefit on that factor, but it does potentially create a big factor for you guys if you have a freeze up and, a bursted pipe inside the facility. Just a quick overview of our team and what we've done. So we've created 343 assessments to date. Total project value over that period of time is just over $35 million from our energy assessments. 675,000, 100,000 gigajoules of energy saved annually. Savings per year around 17 million annually, and the carbon reduction of 69,219 metric tons a year. Our clients in this aspect generally see in the fossil fuel sector around a return on investment around the 2-year mark, sometimes less, sometimes a little greater. Our electrical customers generally see around a 4-year, 4.5-year return on investment. That's a total view. When we look at the case studies, so we look at, a school project that we did, relatively we can see a scale up really all over the map with mechanical insulation. The findings for mechanical insulation is so much different than like a lighting assessment, for example. A lighting assessment going into the facility, you completely understand, how many fixtures and how many components that you're assessing. For mechanical insulation, it's solely driven on how proactive your facility may have been in the maintenance and repair of mechanical insulation. So we see a wide scale, and I'll highlight that with some of the case studies. Relatively small project here in a school, $7,562 savings. Contract price, the cost saving of $9,432 annually. Energy savings of 672,042 kBTUs annually, and a reduction for this facility of 20 metric tons of carbon per year, for a return investment of 1.2 year. If we look at a regional correction center, contract price is $21,990. Cost savings is $17,065 annually. That's in their utility measures. Energy savings, 426,708 kBTUs annually, with a reduction for this facility of 41.08 metric tons of carbon reduced annually. And the return on investment for this project is a 1.3-year payback period. Community college, contract price is $116,138. Cost savings, $45,809 annually from the utility prices. The energy savings for this facility was $1,238,317 of annual kBTU energy savings. Carbon reduction of 101.99 metric tons annually, with a return on investment relatively great at the 2.5-year mark. And a city hall. So you can see, as we show in the case studies, there is a wide range of project value. There's a wide range of facilities that can benefit from this program. Relatively low cost project at $8,500. The cost savings at $3,226 annually. Energy savings at 247,050 kBTU annually. Carbon reduction at 16.41 metric tons a year in carbon reduction. with a return on investment of 2.6 years. And then the last slide for me, obviously, is just contact information. I know Rebecca and Megan and the team have programs that they're going to talk about and incentives that are available. We see that there's a huge value in these programs and what it can do for your facilities. If you guys want any guidance or questions or any more information, I provided all my contact information. I'm happy to be a resource for you guys. And that's an overview of mechanical insulation.
All right, thank you so much, Josh. I will share my screen and take it from here for a little bit. All right, everyone. So as Josh noted, there are a number of funding opportunities available for anyone interested in installing mechanical insulation or upgrading existing mechanical insulation in their buildings. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Maryland Energy Administration's Mechanical Insulation Grant Program. All right, so in terms of the purpose of this program, I wanted to start off the top just noting that this is currently a closed program and it's no longer accepting applications until it relaunches later in fiscal year 2027. However, the program is expected to open in a different iteration sometime around early fall 2026. That being said, when the program does come back online and is accepting applications again, it's generally for funding eligible Maryland buildings to support the installation of mechanical insulation at both commercial, industrial, and also nonprofit buildings or properties. Funding is generally intended to help enable energy savings improvements to buildings and applications such as large-scale thermal distribution networks. Also, generally, eligible recipients can also use program grants to help defray expenses associated with specifying, procuring, and installing mechanical insulation. All right, so as I noted, this program is currently closed, but I did want to give the audience a sense of what they might expect coming up in fiscal year 2027 for this program offering. So I did want to touch on some previous fiscal year program metrics and just kind of details to give you an idea of what you can look forward to in the future. So again, in the previous year, fiscal year 2026, the total program funding was $400,000 and applications were reviewed on a first come, first served basis. In terms of funding stipulations, the program only considered applications with a total project cost valued at no less than $10,000. And there was also a max grant amount, which was either 30% of the total amount of qualified project expenses or $20,000, whichever was less of the two. And then I also want to note that if multiple applications were submitted by the same entity, the total grant award was capped at $50,000. Okay. I also wanted to say that anyone who's interested in learning more, please feel free to reference the Mechanical Insulation Grant Program website, which is linked in these slides, and we will be providing copies of the presentation slide deck following the webinar. So you can always click the link to visit the webpage, or you can also review last year's fiscal year 2026 funding opportunity announcement, which contains all of the previous year's relevant program requirements, eligibility criteria, evaluation metrics, and more for those of you who are curious. But again, please stay posted for the fiscal year 2027 program offerings and funding opportunity announcement to ensure you're up to date on any changes to the program design and any other relevant details. Okay, so looking ahead, I also wanted to give a rough timeline of what prospective mechanical installation grant program applicants may expect if they're interested in applying for grant funding. I wanted to note that the program, alongside the funding opportunity announcement, will likely launch, as noted earlier, sometime in early fall 2026. And then following program launch, applicants generally have a few months to submit their scope of work to the program. Following the application deadline, there's a review period to evaluate submitted scopes of work based on any metrics outlined in the FOA. And then after the evaluation period, awardees will then be notified of their grant funding and be issued commitment letters, likely around late winter of 2027. And then last, grant agreement letters will be issued for review and signature, and grantees can then begin their approved projects, likely sometime around spring of 2027. So I just wanted to make sure everyone on the call, if they're interested in this program, this is a likely estimated timeline of what you might be able to expect for this coming fiscal year. I also wanted to tack on that anyone who is interested, please be aware that MEA issues grant funding in arrears, meaning that any grantees will only be reimbursed for approved scopes of work once proper invoice documentation is provided. All right. As a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask those and enter them into the Q&A chat. We are happy to answer, and we're also happy to take any questions offline if you want to email us directly. But otherwise, I think that will conclude my slide deck, and I will go ahead and pass the mic to our friends at ICF to talk about Empower Maryland incentive programs, for which mechanical installation is an eligible measure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. I am Lauren Busher. I'm the Building Tune-Up Outreach Manager. And while Daniel comes on camera and mic and pulls up the slides, I'll start with talking a little bit about what Empower Maryland is. So if we want to go to the next slide. So Empower Maryland has been operating in the state of Maryland in many forms since 2008. So the surcharge funds are notated on your bill. So if you take a look at your bill, you'll see a line that says Empower Maryland funds. And those are strictly for helping reduce energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions and saving the customers money. So for my program that I help oversee, the Building Tune-Up program, everybody knows who is a building owner or facilities manager, you always have your problem children, like your HVAC system that is dying and needs to be replaced. But a lot of these, everybody knows also that a lot of the problems are those, I won't say smaller things, but the hidden things, like have been talked about in the webinar previously today, like mechanical insulation. So the spirit of the Building Tune-Up program and the HVAC Tune-Up program is really to start to deep dive into those little things that you can put together that have the synergistic effect of reducing the overall energy output of the building. And the bottom line is to save you money. So for the Empower Maryland Fund, we have an application process that everyone must go through to apply for these programs and also to justify their energy savings. So if the first step is identifying that mechanical insulation is an area of concern for our buildings, what's the next step? How do we incentivize this? How do we make that happen? Well, I'm going to pass it over to Daniel to talk a little bit about that, introduce himself. And basically, Daniel, the question is, how do we make these mechanical insulation projects work?
All right. Thanks, everybody. I recognize some of your names, so I'm happy to talk about how you can take advantage of incentives from the utilities. I'll just note to start with that our map here shows generally which utility covers which area. If you're not sure who serves your building or your customer's building, just ask and I will figure it out for you. So we have, how can Empower help your building save with insulation? Basically the list of things you can insulate. As you heard earlier, reduce energy loss, reduce energy costs, get rebates. It is slightly more involved than that, but that's the basic idea. We have direct incentives from Washington Gas through their prescriptive program, paid based on the feet of pipe insulation installed. Pretty straightforward. Washington Gas incentives currently cover Maryland and Virginia. The Maryland incentives from Washington Gas will end at the end of this year, so you might as well get those applications in now. All of our programs are open for incentives. On the right side of the screen, we have our electric utility incentives for energy savings, and these are all through the building tune-up programs, which offer tiered rebates based on project cost and energy savings. Generally, we can pay up to 85% of the project cost, but it differs by utility. BGE has a 30 cent per kilowatt hour of savings cap, and their small building tune-up incentive maxes out at $30,000. If you do have an absolutely humongous project, like some of the ones I saw on the screen earlier, that might fit more into a large building tune-up, which maxes out at $100,000. Pepco and Delmarva Power, in addition to a per kWh savings incentive, also have a $3 per therm saved incentive. And that also covers up to 85% of the project cost. Their projects max out at $200,000. So if you have a bigger project, definitely easy to collect some good money there. Smeco's project maxes out at 75%, up to $25,000. It's a good opportunity. Things we require to get the incentive. On the left side of the screen, I've got the portal links, and I'll share the slide deck with everybody later. There's a checklist on the right, what we need. Customer needs to sign a terms and conditions. We need their account number. We need some kind of a scope narrative or report describing the existing conditions and what you are going to do, how much you're going to insulate. Specifications on the boiler or chiller that creates the heating or cooling capacity that is being wasted by lack of insulation or poorly performing insulation. We'll also need savings calculations, either in Excel or as an energy model. We can help you with that. Very important cost estimate for the work, because our incentives are typically capped at 85% of the project cost. We should know what that is, including your time spent on the incentive application. Obviously, take pictures. We need photos showing what you did before and after. The before photos are really important because nobody can verify that except through photos or believing your word. We can help you calculate. I talked to one of our engineers, and this is the list of things he is pretty sure we could use to calculate energy savings for the project. So if you're not sure how to do this, but you can gather information, we can still talk about that. That's pretty much what I got. Any questions?
Awesome. Thanks all. Well, if that is it with presentations, we can segue into the Q&A. Reminder, folks, that it's the bottom right-hand side of your screen. If you click those 9 dots, a menu will come up and you can click the Q&A portion. So I'm just going to go through. We've got some questions in there, but keep them coming. I actually wanted to start with one that wasn't a question, but it made me laugh. Not a question, but the Insulators logo is cool. I agree, and I think I said that to Josh on the call we had leading up to this, so thanks. Can we apply for both an Empower incentive and an MEA grant for the same project?
Yeah, you can also go after the Empower incentive right now. Our program is open. It doesn't have a a funding cycle like that, although we are going to see a new program cycle start at the beginning of 2027. This type of measure is ridiculously cost effective, and I would recommend that it be done. I mean, on the order of, if you have incandescent lights somewhere, change them out to LEDs. If you have uninsulated steam pipes somewhere, please insulate them.
Yeah, and I would also add for the questioner, definitely try and get your project in as soon as possible. Like Daniel was saying, we have all anticipation that the programs for Empower Maryland are going to continue for the next 3 years. They are given approval from the state of Maryland in 3-year program cycles. So we are going to have one starting in 2027. But, you know, there's always some lag with new program startups. So we always encourage people when it's the end of a program year, make sure you get those projects in as early as possible so you can ensure funding on this cycle's Empower Maryland fund.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I do see Nadine has her hand raised, so why don't we just go ahead and unmute her? She wants to ask her question. Nadine, you want to ask the question, or did you want to throw it into the Q&A? Nope, feeling shy? Okay. Do building owners have to apply for Empower incentives directly, or can a service provider or other entity apply on their behalf?
Either. Any registered service provider can apply for incentives on behalf of their customers. That's usually the way it works. I know at least a few of the people I've seen in the chat have been already registered, so you may already be in position to do this. We're happy to help you register if you're a company that wants to register as well.
Okay, yeah, and that there's a question kind of on that tune. Does the building tune-up program have a list of qualified service providers?
Absolutely. We can send a link to that after the webinar today. And I will add an additional caveat that for my program, which is building tune-up, we do in most cases require that the service provider that you're working with that's going to be doing the energy modeling that's required to submit these projects, we do require that they register as a service provider, but it's a very simple process.
Okay, awesome. Okay, there was an interesting one that had a few likes that I wanted to, I think this is probably Josh, you might be the best one to answer this. Are there certain certifications we can pursue to learn more? And I feel like there's two parts to this question, like maybe certifications that a building owner who's just interested could take, and then maybe a service provider who wants to get into this line of work. So maybe kind of hitting that at two angles.
Yeah, I guess there's programs out there that train for mechanical installation assessments and stuff that you guys can take. I would highly recommend, exploring that as well as looking at thermography training. We believe that that's a key element in this process. And if you don't have that certification, your readings can be dramatically off in the thermography aspect. You want to make sure that you're qualified, that the readings that you're calculating based on were calculated correctly. So I would say that any type of mechanical installation assessment training that's available, as well as thermography, would be a very key element.
Awesome, thank you.
And just as another side topic, our organization has some programs that we offer as well. We have some Department of Energy grant funding to do some training and stuff. So we do offer some of that training, but there is external sources as well.
Awesome. Okay, here's a question that Josh, I do think you addressed in your presentation, but I'm going to ask it so you can reiterate. Do specific building types see bigger impacts by replacing old or installing new mechanical insulation?
Yeah, so that's kind of a loaded question in a certain aspect, just because of the simple aspect of how much proactiveness your facility has been with mechanical insulation. We see newer construction that's sometimes not built to the proper standard. So sometimes the savings on newer constructions are there. Obviously, your age buildings that, as Daniel mentioned, steam systems. Steam systems are horrible energy loss facilities. And a lot of them, because of the age of the steam systems, mechanical insulation is often missing. So you could see 15-20% of your mechanical insulation being missing in those type of situations.
Cool. Okay, here's one for the ICF folks. Is the energy saved as heat/gas measured in therms able to be included in the utility programs that are paid as kilowatt hour savings through a conversion calculation? I know that was kind of a mouthful.
So the KWH is purely for electricity. Currently, EPCO and Delmarva Power also offer an incentive rate for therms of savings if you're doing a project that contains both gas and electricity savings by virtue of insulating, a couple chilled water lines in addition to the steam line, or recalibrating pumps, doing other things in the building. I mean, maybe once you insulate that line, the system no longer has to work quite as hard because you're no longer heating miles of underground tunnels full of pipes. Instead, you're just heating the buildings you're supposed to be heating or cooling. There could be a lot of other things going on there. And we should definitely discuss projects, especially bigger projects. We expect that next year, SMECO and BGE will offer some kind of therm incentive. So stay tuned.
And then to add to that as well, I think it was Mr. Lewis who asked that question. We definitely recommend that you reach out to us and maybe schedule a scoping call to discuss. As we get into the weeds, we always like to schedule scoping calls just to discuss specifics of each, because each project is unique and different.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, here's one. How should building owners prioritize mechanical insulation upgrades within their broader decarbonization plan? So sort of what I interpret this to mean is, okay, I've got to do a lot. Like I have to do a massive retrofit on my building. I want to get insulation. I want to maybe electrify, and I want to get on-site solar. Should I pursue mechanical insulation first in the process, last, in the middle? So that's kind of how I read that.
I would characterize mechanical insulation as low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
If you're not sure what on earth you're doing, this is a massive endeavor. Mechanical insulation may not be decarbonization at all, but it is going to make whatever you have in your building more efficient. It is relatively affordable. I mean, we saw some expensive projects, but they also delivered a lot of savings. It's a lot cheaper than replacing equipment. Certainly going to be cheaper than redesigning your system, which many of you are going to need to do anyway. And we do have money for that, both in power programs and the MEA.
And if I could just add to that, I mean, Daniel took my sales pitch out from every client meeting is mechanical insulation is low-hanging fruit. What we recommend is a mechanical insulation becomes your baseline. We can break that down. For us, we do the assessments, and when we break that down as units and areas and different functions within your building. So it's smaller capital projects that you can manage and kind of look at a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan. But on the flip side of that, most of our clients, what they truly see is it's that short-term return on investment that helps pay for some of these long-term projects that you may be planning, and you may be looking for ways to source funding for that. And I think that's an important factor for you guys in that decision making. For us, we're government funding for our assessments. So our assessments are no cost, no obligation to facilities, because we really feel strongly that it has to be that baseline for facilities to make that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan.
Awesome. Megan, I wanted to ask you a question. This is just coming from me. I just want to be crystal clear. So, I was talking in my remarks about that big commercial and community buildings grant program that's going to encompass multiple kind of previous programs. Is the mechanical insulation program going to be in that kind of Frankenstein program, or is it a standalone?
Correct. So mechanical insulation will be consolidated with other programs into that FY27 commercial and community buildings program. So it will be back for fiscal year 27, just in a slightly different format.
Okay, so then, if folks are doing a pretty comprehensive retrofit, again, they want VRF system, they want insulation, and then they want some mechanical insulation upgrades, they can kind of apply for all of those measures in one application?
So correct, they can stack within the program itself. There's going to be a couple different ways they can go about it. So I'd say to stay tuned for when we do release the program and have additional instruction on how to go about that process. But essentially, yes, you will be able to apply to multiple measures within the program.
Fantastic. Okay, that's exciting. I'm very excited for that. Okay, we've got just a few minutes. What role does mechanical insulation play in ensuring long-term equipment performance? And I think this was addressed, but let's just, reiterate.
I guess I could field that one. I think we see, like I say, it's a low-hanging fruit of your system is to, capture what's missing and just get that re-insulated. And being able to see where those savings are and how that generates for your facility. In the same token, overheated mechanical spaces cause a lot of problems that, as much as the invisible savings are there by not insulating, the invisible threat to your mechanical systems as a whole by not having that insulation. We've had clients that have mechanical breakdowns, electrical components. We've had some school customers that the classrooms over top of their boiler infrastructure piping is unusable space because of overheating. You can't put occupants in it. We've seen mechanical insulation make those spaces usable again, just by insulating the piping and seeing the benefits of the utility costs, but also gaining access to parts of your facility that you didn't have before. So those things are hard to quantify as far as a dollar amount, but the savings are definitely there, and facility owners definitely see that long-standing equipment non-breakdowns, I guess you could say.
Awesome. Okay, I guess last call for questions. I've run through everything that has come in. I will give folks, 20 more seconds. And we can break a couple minutes early.